Welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld. I'm always happy to be here with my good friend Adam Apollo, who is at the cutting edge of so many things, so many investigations of science, spirituality, incarnation, other planets. You don't mind when I call you the captain of the starship, do you?
Don't mind at all. I prefer Admiral at these days, but Captain's
Admiral, yeah,
fine.
you mentioned that before. You have in this beautiful book for a common sentience called Lifetimes, which is really about, I would say, there it is, the science of incarnation. And you bring a lot of science into a spiritual understanding of what it is to be embodied, to live on a certain timeline. And
Mm,
I underlined this one key phrase you sort of say in the beginning, and you can explain it and break it down. You say,
hmm
I realize that space-time is a state of tensegrity where there's an even push between pull and pull of the fundamental nodes of energy that make up the fabric of space-time. So I really so what is tensegrity, and how do you break down the fabric of space-time in context of the human soul existence embodied? Does that
mm.
make Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty small question there.
All right.
It's a classic Alan Steinfeld. Let's go to the depths of reality. I love it. Um, so first of all, tensegrity is a concept that was coined by Buckminster Fuller. It's when within any system you have an equal push and pull in the forces between 2 points in a lattice or in an architecture. Tensegrity is the reason we have geodesic domes. Tensegrity is the reason we can build massive skyscrapers with really interesting things that kind of stick out the sides. And almost every really amazing piece of architecture in the world leverages tensegrity. And you can imagine it when you're standing with a friend, and if each of you sort of lean back, but you hold on to each other's hands, you're experiencing tensegrity because you're both being pulled by the gravity to fall, but you also have a connection to each other, which creates another equal pull that balances that gravitational pull. And so it's this dance of pull and push and balance within a field. So space-time exhibiting this phenomena allows it to essentially be a highly crystalline structure, a beautiful geometry, you could say. And this beautiful geometry has certain properties that cause it to bend and fold and become protons and neutrons, electrons, molecules, all the way up to the matter of everything that we see, right? So inherent to that, we couldn't exactly make a leap from there straight to the metaphysics of past lives. But what we can do is start to understand that this field of space-time has properties that operate the same way as any other studies of consciousness that we do. The space-time structure itself has feedback. It has properties that show forms of memory. And in my work on the proton, we've found that protons actually operate as memory storage units. And how do we know that for sure? Well, it turns out there's the same number of quantum bits, quantum information bits in a proton as there are Planck seconds in the lifetime of the universe. And that can't be a coincidence. There's 8 times 10 to the 60th Planck seconds since the beginning of the universe, and there's 10 to the 60th quantum bits in every proton. So the theory that I'm proposing is that every proton is growing with the universe. And that means that your desk is remembering things right now. Your microphone is remembering things. The camera is remembering things. Every piece of matter in your body, your bones, your cells, all of it is made of protons. And those protons form the atoms and the molecules that make you up. So that means everything is remembering. And Alan, it's funny because we use this word matter, right, to talk about physical world objects. But the word matter comes from the word mater, which literally means mother.
Yeah.
So the mother, the great goddess, so to speak, across all history, may be truly embedded in the memory that is all around us. It's that everything is sacred and everything remembers. And that changes a lot of things in our perception of the world.
Well, I love all that, but I'd like to break it down a little more. So you correlate the amount of time that the universe exists in Planck's constants. I'm just reviewing, so I integrate it
Sure.
to the protons in a human body. Is that what you're saying?
To every proton. Literally every proton in the universe is as old as the universe, as far as we know, and is growing along with the age of the universe.
What do you mean growing? There's more protons being produced, you're saying?
What I'm saying is that every second, every 8 Planck seconds, a new quantum bit shows up in every proton. There's a direct balance between the number of quantum information bits in a proton and the number of seconds in the lifetime of the universe. So, yeah.
So matter is growing and time is growing in a
Yes.
sense.
The universe is growing, time is growing, and every proton, every piece of matter in the whole universe is growing along with it. Now, these quantum bits are so tiny, though, Alan, that it's not like you would ever notice a proton growing unless you were tracking the exact diameter of a proton over, 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years. Then you might notice its growth. But these bits are extremely small. This is the smallest possible wavelength in the electromagnetic spectrum that gets us down to these Planck length quantum bits.
Right. But the thing I think that I make the distinction between matter holding information and biological substances, DNA holding information, is that we can maybe access the biological past memories within the DNA, and we can't necessarily in matter. Maybe if you're psychic, you hold a piece of metal, maybe you can, but how do we access the infinite nature of existence through matter?
Well, part of this part of the book is really about starting to understand the physics of memory itself, right? And if we want to understand the physics of memory, we got to get down to the basic core of what memory is and how it's being stored in the first place. And I found that correlation between the lifetime of the universe and the number of Planck units in the proton because I was actually studying the proton and I noticed that in the geometry of the proton, using it as a curved bundle of spacetime, high tensegrity light lattice of spacetime curved into a ball, that you get these little vector vortices, a vortex into different points on its surface. And these vortexes, when you look at the geometry of the vortex as it goes down into the proton, it from the top looks like the same exact geometry that DNA exhibits. So it's a decagonal rotation. If you look at DNA from the top, it's pentagonal and decagonal as it spins and rotates down. So I was like, wow, that's really interesting that by just doing by first principle the geometry of the proton as a geodesic, like a Bucky dome, and looking at it like a curved piece of space-time, it's got a part of it where the geometry matches what DNA looks like. And that's what first gave me the idea, maybe the proton is storing information, right? And so then I go further with that into the genetic side of things in the book, Alan, where I do talk about genetic memory. And we all know that you have genetic memory coming from your mom and from your dad, mother and father lines, and those ancestral lines. However, what we're not accounting for is all of this additional information that seems to imprint into the body during the period of the fetus gestation and into birth. And some of the genes that turn on and off, some of the codex of this other information, we don't understand right now in genetics. We don't know where it comes from. And it's my theory that that information is actually coming from your soul and your other incarnations. So you're actually bringing information from each of these times you've incarnated and you're merging that with your mother stream and your father stream into the body that you're in. So you have both ancestral memory biologically accessed through the body, as well as your personal soul's memory accessed through the body. And then we tie it all together through ancient sites. So I know you want to jump in, but we'll
Oh,
come
no,
right back.
no. I just want to digest because I mean, I've heard some of these concepts. I've always been interested in the science of incarnation because it's
Mhm,
supposed to be a science.
mhm,
What is the nature of the soul? We know what the body, we know protons matter, but
mm.
what is this essence that you're calling soul?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is a soul? Who are you? What are you? I mean, that ultimately is the greatest question of all time. And you seeking to know yourself is the road to understanding what the soul is. And in my own journey, what I've come to understand is that my soul, my experience of my soul, is the individuated essence that has been experiencing itself as I am for as long as I can remember. And my memory happens to extend not only through this life, but into many, many other lifetimes. So there's this continuum that I am, this continuum that doesn't stop, that doesn't end when I die, that I don't know when it started. I can't find the origin moment of, oh, there I was, a soul popped into being. Probably similar to the fact that you don't really remember when you come out of your mother, right? Like the moment of birth is this kind of mysterious thing. But yes, it's the individuated nature of us. And then here's the real kicker, Alan. Like, okay, so what if matter does remember or not, right? And what if your DNA does remember or not? What's the point? What do you do with that? Where does it get? What do you get with that? Well, anyone I know, and I just came back from a 2 week long journey again in Egypt, and I was in Bhutan, and these are places where I've lived and had experiences in other lives. And when you go into some of these temples and these sacred sites, and you begin to feel and sing into the stone, you begin to feel the places resonate, your body actually begins to access information in the stone itself. We ask ourselves, why did these ancient cultures build these massive megalithic sites? Well, if it's true that matter stores information, water is going to transfer that information all the time. Air, it's floating all around and sharing all over the planet. The water and the air share all that information around the world. But what keeps that information stable and steady for not just years, but thousands of years, millions of years? Giant megalithic stones. So I believe that the peoples of the earth, going back to the time, especially during the period of Atlantis prior to the end of the last ice age, and that many of the structures built through extraterrestrial collaboration and contact were created as hard drives on the planet to store information, sacred knowledge and information in the stone. And of course, when you're in Egypt, you literally see that. It's not just in the energy that comes off the stone, it's coming through all the imprints of everything etched into the stone also, right? And you're in a library. You're in Dendera, and it's a giant library of consciousness. But the interesting thing is, you don't have to read the hieroglyphs. You don't have to understand what's on the walls. You can literally close your eyes, put your hand on the wall, and information will come to you. And when that information is in resonance with something you experienced in a prior lifetime, if you were there before or you had that specific information, now the past life part of you and the present moment stone and your body now all start to entangle and integrate and transmit that information into your body now at this time.
Right.
And this is a phenomenon that almost everybody I know that's been to sacred sites can attest to. And no one understands the science of that. And I believe that we're getting to the root of that science through this book and through studying this effect of memory across time.
Yeah, no, I felt that very same thing in Avebury, standing by those the standing stone circles there. And
Mhm.
of course, in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
I am home here. I'm
Mm.
home. It
Yes.
feels so clean and pure and
Mm.
resonant. Like I could stay there for days probably in that
Yeah.
place. So I know what you're saying, but the question that I mean, one of the questions, I have many questions for you because this is
Sure.
so fascinating. I mean, I interviewed Mark Anthony. He talks about this, but not in the
Mm.
scientific detail that you really talk about. The
Mhm.
essence of the soul, the thing that mixes with the memories that is housed with, say, within the DNA and proton. What is the essence? What is the soul thing we're talking about? What is the substance? If I mean you described it, but what is there a substance? Is it an energy? Let's call it energetic. Let's call it plasma. How do you describe this essence of soul nature?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about at the deepest level, the soul itself, is there a way to describe that in terms of elements or essences? Um, I would say not from the lens that we would normally use to describe the composition of something,
Mhm.
because you as as an essence, as a nature, as a conscious source of things, you participate through what we call the planes or the realms or the dimensions. So you're coming down through from this sort of infinite, eternal, divine nature state through an atmic body that is holographically encoded in its connection to the whole universe and all that is, through what we would call the Akashic body, where you are a storage of information and knowledge and wisdom that has existed across many, 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 many lifetimes, right? And a lot of the past life work that we do, what you're doing is you're actually learning how to read your Akasha, your own memory field across time. And you're coming down through the causal layer, which is where we have all these relationships. And, if I asked you, what is the substance of love? What is the
Right.
substance of connection and relationship? Even at that level, it's very difficult to define what that is because it's not playing in the realm of physics and matter and that kind of thing. But if we continue down, we could say, well, now you then have your astral body, and we definitely know that the astral body starts to interface with electromagnetism and light. There's been a lot of studies that show astral projection and remote viewing influencing magnetic detectors or light detectors. So now you're at the kind of light body, and then you go down into your emotional field, and that's even stronger electromagnetism. The vibes that you feel in a room, you're talking about quantum field entanglement and resonance within a space, and then all the way down into your physical body where you're assembled of fire, air, earth, water, and spirit, or what we call thermodynamics and hydrodynamics and geophysics and aerodynamics. All of these are physics of your body. And what ties all those levels together? Well, you could say energy. I'm energy. But, just as I experienced when I was in high school and college, ask someone what energy is. Good luck. See if you can get an answer for that. There isn't really one, right? We just know that it's something that's vibrating, it's powerful, it's full of charge, and everything is made out of it through the entire universe.
So a soul, let's say, is a field of energy that is specialized connection to the Akashic field that um, is sort of transcending time and space, but it's playing within the localized space time in a sense. So,
Yeah,
I
I would
mean,
say that the soul emanates through planes where energy is released from its existence or emanated from its existence. Um, but to define the soul as simply energy, I think is probably to cut off the truth in some way.
but getting back to you and your travels around the world, it feels like I'm just guessing and saying you're collecting pieces of yourself. You go to Bhutan, you go to Egypt, go to the
Yeah.
Middle East, and you're picking up these soul frequencies that are embedded there from lifetimes that you're now integrating into the greater essence of this moment of evolution. That's
Yeah.
what I'm, yeah.
Well, of just who I am for sure, and helping others to do the same. Because here's the thing, the world is changing massively right now. And we need to have as many skills and abilities and self-awareness, self-knowledge, clarity as we possibly can have, right? There's all kinds of things being forced fed to us about ourselves, about our history, about who we are. But the truth is, only you really know your own journey through time. Only you really can actually access the depth of the truth of your soul and who you truly are. And when you do this work of excavating your past, what you realize is that when you find things that were painful and difficult, you also realize that oftentimes you've had patterns in this life that connect to that painful moment in a past life. And when you go in to heal it and accept it, embrace it more fully, as you release those karmas and sanskaras, it releases all the way through to now. And you actually begin living in a different way from those patterns. And the same is true with gifts and skills, because often through healing some of the most difficult past lives, for example, that's in this book is my lifetime in Japan, where I was Tokugawa Tadanaga, born in 1605. Miyamoto Musashi was my sword master. I ended up killing a guy who was important to my family, who ran a village, and because he was abusing a woman that I was in love with. She was a geisha. He bought her, and he abused her every day. And so I called him into a duel, and I basically cut him in half with one strike. And I brought shame on my own family. And so I killed myself in that lifetime. I committed seppuku. And when this happened, it created a rift in my own soul's journey where I had to now resolve this sense of somehow honor being above my own love for myself and my own life. And I had to learn some pretty serious lessons from that over several lifetimes. And then in this life, as I began to really heal that, and I had echoes of it as a little kid, there were times I was really upset and I felt like I just wanted to die, right? I just wanted to go kill myself. And I didn't know why. Why was that there? What was that about? But as I got older and I started to excavate and understand this lifetime and what happened, not only was I able to love and embrace and heal myself from this experience of this suicidal part of me and this place in me that felt like I needed to escape, but I also got back all of these skills from that lifetime in Japan. The skill to wield a katana, to do Japanese calligraphy, to do tea ceremony, to sit in different kind of way and move in a different kind of way and reclaim so much of the gifts that I had in that time. And those gifts have helped me immensely now in this life.
Wow. So, I mean, I've had memories of other lifetimes too,
Mhm.
some not pleasant in the concentration camps of World War II.
Oof.
That was at a picnic.
Yeah.
Uh, and I still feel reverberations of that
Hmm.
or other lifetimes. But how do you resolve, let's say, the pain of those past experiences that we still carry within the soul frequency and resolve it as wisdom and and get the gifts of those maybe not so pleasant experiences? How do you recommend?
Yeah, well, the journey is not much different than facing the painful things you've gone through in this life. Most people have some level of trauma, some level of painful experience in their past. And we may or may not even be conscious of it. We may or may not be accepting of it, resisting it, whatever it is we're going through with it. And the first step is actually embracing it and accepting it. So that means going back in your memory to the time when you went through that really painful experience and being willing to actually just look at it, to look at what happened, to see what you went through, and to, as much as possible, embrace yourself and forgive yourself for going through the experience. Forgive others that maybe hurt you in that time. And you may not be ready to do that yet, but at least forgiving yourself is a good first step. And there's different stages to trauma healing, but acceptance of the experience is the first one. And as you begin to really see this whole part of you, the more you're able to see it and embrace it, the more it becomes clear why you went through it.
Right.
Because, for example, with me, I had a sort of manipulative step parent for a number of years. And it was really difficult at the time to understand what was going on. I was being manipulated, emotionally manipulated and otherwise. And yet as I became more sensitive to it and as I was able to look at it later, I realized that it gave me an incredible tool and gift, which is that I became very sensitive to when someone has harmful intent or is trying to emotionally or otherwise manipulate me or somebody else. So I got really great alarm bells for disinformation campaigns, right? So that's one way that I started to accept that journey in this life. Now, in other lives, I experienced many other kinds of things: dying, killing people, going through death and rebirth, having friends slaughtered or burned at the stake as witches. These are many, many different things that we go through. And it's a little bit different because in a past life, you've usually already resolved a tremendous amount of whatever it was you went through in that lifetime by the time you went to your death. So when you go into accepting the events and the experiences, it's actually just about letting the information come, letting yourself see what's there, and allowing that you chose it for a reason, that your soul chose this as part of your journey for a reason. And the more you're able to see that, the more you shift from this sort of victim mode into the mode of the curiosity and the compassion and the connection. Because, even people that I had a friend in college and we killed each other in a past life. And we had to go through the intensity of the release of that event. But then after that, we actually became much closer friends. We trusted each other more. We bonded more deeply because we go through past lifetimes and then we finish that life. We resolve that life. And as we resolve the things that we've done in the past, we get the gifts of the wisdom and the skills and the abilities from those times.
Right. No, that makes sense, and I appreciate you going through that because I think maybe I did resolve a lot of that because I did do a past life regression,
Mm,
which sure you recommend because that's your
yeah.
soul talking to you. So when I
Yeah.
finished that lifetime and I went back to sort of my home planet, and I know, and we can talk about getting into parallel off-planet lives. I was
Sure.
kind of welcomed and said, okay, now go back and have a really good time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That,
Mm-hmm.
so I've been having that a pretty good time. And
Good.
so,
You seem like it, yeah. As
yeah,
long as I've
oh,
known you, you seem like a pretty happy guy, having a good time, doing your
yeah,
creative work. I
yeah,
love it.
exactly. That's what we're here to do. But
Yeah.
that was a huge learning about the nature of the human experience. Of course, I still have stuff to learn these days, but
Yeah.
is there then a an arrow of time, or is lifetimes happening all the time? Because it's, if the soul is evolving lifetime to lifetime, then it's
Mm-hmm.
chronological. But if there isn't that, then how do you explain that sequence?
Well, the most important thing to begin with in answering that is to just once again refresh that we're multidimensional beings, right? So, at the level of our divine, infinite, eternal self, you're everywhere, everything, everyone, all the time, everything at once, right? Everywhere, everyone, everything, all at once. In fact, one of my friends is getting that tattooed on her legs. And so, yes, at that level, yes, you are that. But the reality that you're experiencing isn't usually that state, right? Like,
Right.
I don't know many people that are actually in full on God state, full on awareness of themselves as the infinite eternal all the time. And so, unfortunately, within a lot of spiritual communities, there's a lot of bypassing that happens through that, where you say, oh, yeah, but we're all one, right? Like we're all experiencing oneness,
Right.
but you're not experiencing oneness. You're in a body, they're in a body, you have dishes to do, you have trash to clean up, you have a bag to deal with, you've got gas to get for your car. You're different and you're separate, and that's actually really important, right? And so, coming from this sort of infinite eternal space, your being cascades down through these different worlds. And the interesting thing is looking at your past lives from the sort of higher states when you're, looking at it in the moment, in the simultaneity, you can feel like you're experiencing it at the exact same time. You're entangling that moment in time to now. But that's just the same as remembering when you were a kid and you remember a specific, tear jerker in your mouth and the way that it burned your tongue and it was so sour. You can echo that experience into the now. But do you have a tear jerker in your mouth right now? No, you don't. Do you have a crybaby or whatever? And so the thing is that you can perceive all moments through time as simultaneity and as now. However, when you're in experiencing, and experiencing means you're having a feeling, you're going through an event, something is happening, all of that is happening within a stream flow of time. And it's actually really great that it's happening like that because thankfully, Alan, you're not in World War II in a concentration camp anymore, right? Thank
Oh,
goodness that's
I've
over.
done that already. Been there, done that.
You already did that, right? And if it
Yeah.
was a parallel life to now and you only believed it that way, then you'd literally be doomed to suffering through the concentration camp now as you're living your life now. But you don't have to because it's already finished.
Mhm.
Fortunately, I already did the thing where I killed myself. Fortunately, I already, made mistakes in ancient Egypt. And, I did these things already so that I could learn. And the lessons that I've learned from those things have made me who I am now. Those
Mhm.
events, those experiences forged my personality and who I am.
So on this level, there's a continuum of space time. Let's
Mhm.
break that down. Then our intersection with space time on multiple levels of reality, right? So
Yes,
how do we work with that? Well, to create, first of all, the best life ever, so we have the
sure.
best everywhere, all the time, all at once. So we have that awareness
Yeah.
within the localized field, and how do we change the world with that awareness? I know these are all big questions, but
Yeah.
you're the guy who has the answers, so I'm curious.
Well, yeah, these are great questions. And the question I often ask back to that kind of inquiry is how do you know what your purpose is?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Most people, a lot of people I know don't even know what their purpose is, but most people that do have a strong sense of purpose. They have that sense of purpose and what their gift is and what they're supposed to do here and why they're supposed to do it because of patterns in their memory and the patterns that they've chosen as a soul, the certain challenges they face, the thing they happen to learn, the book they happen to read, the teacher they happen to have, that place they happen to travel to, all of these things synchronize and interconnect into the forming of you as your purpose. But what I found is that even my lens on purpose in this life was a very limited view of my purpose. Once I began to understand the journey that I've been on and the things I've chosen across life after life after life after life and many of the patterns that I picked, and it's not that every life I was really on that track of purpose. I had some lives that were like real chill and I just did this little thing on the side and I had another adventure, a different kind of experience. But overarchingly, through these lifetimes, all the way back to my lives on other planets, there are certain threads that deeply show me what I love to do, what I love to create, how I love to serve, and what my purpose is. And so each of those pieces forged me into who I am. And the really beautiful thing about having accepted and remembered and accessed these skills and these memories and these aspects of myself is that now I can flip in a moment and I'm suddenly an Indian saint. And then I can flip in another moment and I'm in Russia and I'm doing the things that I did in Russia. I speak this way, I know how to do it, I know how to drink vodka, I can drink you under the table anytime, no problem. You bring it, I do it, right? Oh, and then there's other parts of me that are like, the Celtic lover in me and the person that learned how to sing to the land and sang to the land so deeply that the land itself began to bloom before my eyes and I could feel the breath of the dragon in the mists, right? Like these are facets of my being, and they're not all like separate, schizophrenic. They're all integrated, and I can choose to pick up an English longsword, or I can choose to pick up a calligraphy pen, or I can choose to pick up a spatula and cook the way I cooked in other lifetimes. And this is one of the reasons why I do so many things. You always introduce me, Alan, and you're like, Paul, he does all these different things. He has all these different interests. Well, that's why, because I can't take all these parts out of me. I want all these parts to be integrated, and I've practiced and developed my skills in doing that. And what I get to experience now in my life is a lot like Avatar: The Last Airbender, where sometimes my lifetimes just light up and they all light up, and I go into Avatar mode and I'm just doing the sacred magic and it's just happening and it's glorious. It's just glorious. And it's all integrated.
So there's so many places to go with all that because it inspires so much dialogue in me. So the soul's purpose may change from lifetime to lifetime, but overall, the incarnational process, from what I've learned from the teachers I've studied with, is to own the human experience, which means we're here to feel every little piece of emotional possibility that we can feel as humans. And then, I know you don't really talk about this in the book, but then the body's essence can vibrate its frequency to the next level. The soul itself feels a sense of completion because we've owned the human experience. So once you get the next adventure of the unknown starts happening, I think that's the process of ascending, but it doesn't happen if you just want to get out of here and get it over with. You have to be here, do the hard work like you're talking about. So do you agree that's the process of ascension, is to own, or is it just forever the same incarnational kind of roulette?
Well, I mean, it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is just to reach the end and exit, then perhaps your goal is to simply release all aspects of all identities of everything you've ever been and dissolve back into the infinite. Perfectly fine. But after all, you came from the infinite, right? So you were already that, and you're getting to experience all these facets of yourself. And so perhaps a better model would be to look at the avatars and the masters that have lived on the earth. And what I find is that as I look at many of these different great masters that have lived, did they know their past lifetimes? Yes. Actually, usually the greatest gurus, the greatest, teachers, they've already integrated many, many, many of their lifetimes. They can talk about them as though they're yesterday. These are just facets of their consciousness through time. And do they attach and identify to them at a level that tries to force people to see them as that same being? No, of course not. So we can learn from that practice too and say, well, okay, just because I was Tokugawa Tadanaga, or just because I was I Keper Keperer Iset Ma'at, like doesn't mean I need you to see me that way. Doesn't mean I need to be that now, because I'm not that. I was that before. But it is still an aspect of me. And because it's an aspect of me, it carries memories, gifts, connections. And, if you think about it this way, when you get down to the roots of it, like what would make you the most spiritually advanced avataric-like being you could possibly be? Well, one of the questions that I like to say is like, well, what if you remembered everything that ever happened to you across all time, everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever read, every person you've ever met, remembered all their names? What if you had complete and total and full memory? Can you imagine what that would be like? It's crazy. I mean, everything you've ever seen, perfect photographic memory of it, like nobody would even know how to relate to you.
Well, it is all recorded in the soul. I mean, we do remember it. It's just not consciously recalled unless we have to.
Right.
So, soul is the Akashic record keeper, that
Mm,
what we stay with. So the purpose of human incarnation, I think, is to learn the lessons, right? But to also enjoy the creation as creation.
mm, mhm.
And and where's the spiral going though? I mean, yes, there is a purpose, and the great masters are here to uplift the the collective whole, because it obviously needs uplifting if we look around us. But
Sure.
so why does the infinite play with itself like this? I guess is the question. What is the overall purpose?
Yes, what is the overall purpose? Well, I can say that from my own journey, the more I've experienced, the more I've seen, the more I've been at all sides of the puzzle, the different sides of the war, the different sides of conflict, the different sides of gender and race and dynamics, the more I've come to, in my consciousness, understand, be able to love, and be able to accept and have compassion for nearly anyone in any kind of condition.
Right.
So I have a lot less victimhood. I have a lot less enemies. I I began to dissolve the part of me that makes others wrong or makes things bad or makes, this or that judged. And instead, I get to say, okay, well, I understand where that comes from. And it started a long time ago. Through the past life work, I started to realize, I don't know if I actually believe in an all-powerful evil at all. I actually think that that might just be a really bad construct and a bad belief system. And that in fact, if you look at the source of all darkness, evil acts, that in reality, there's always a trauma somewhere. It's a kid that's been traumatized who grows up to beat and abuse people, and sometimes it's someone who's had lifetimes and lifetimes of trauma that acts out as a serial killer or a murderer, right? And I started to wonder, well, what happens if you actually heal the root trauma in those people? Like what happens when that trauma gets healed? What happens when that gets accepted and they actually deal with the pain and that memory and they alchemize it and they cry and they bawl and they let it out and they let it through themselves? Well, based on my own experiences, you come out the other side and you feel so much more love. You feel like acceptance of your life. You feel reconciled. And if you look at cases of people on death row and things like that that go through these massive healing experiences, they come out the other side and they're different people now. They're more integrated people.
Right.
And I think that that's part of the key here is that no matter what's happening, we're all being taught love. And no matter how crazy and dark it looks, we're beginning to see the truth in all these different facets so that we can learn to love it, so that we can actually embrace all of these aspects of what it means to be God, to be ourselves, because it's all God, right? So it's all good. It just looks difficult at different points in time.
Right. No, I appreciate all that. I appreciate the hard work you've done on yourself and also this book, communicating this to other people, because I think when people get a sense of the spiritual explorations of Earth and galactic past lives, which I want to talk about just a little bit. We have a little bit more time, if you
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
It's a learning because they are dealing with themselves all the time. And why are they in this situation? What do they have to learn? And how is this, I think, the universe for us is essentially what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever happens, it's for us. So when you
Ultimate paranoia.
that
It's
paranoia,
all
exactly.
happening for you. It's all happening for you. You may not be able to see it yet, but it is.
Right. So when you go to when you've remembered these galactic lifetimes off planet on other,
Mm.
are the lessons there? This is a question I've always wanted. Are the lessons
Mm.
there different because the quality of emotionality might be different, or are they pretty much the same as it is as a human being? Just curious.
Very different lessons. Very different lessons because lessons are based on culture, dynamics, the nature of the types of conflicts we go through. Like every lesson has a different harmonic, resonant quality. And if you want to back up to the physics level, you could say, well, you're also around a different star. So you have a
Right.
different base level of energetic harmonics. You're on a different planet around that star, which has a whole different biosphere responding to those harmonics with a whole different way of life growing up and experiencing things and going through things. So, for example, in my lifetime in the Syrian star system, when I was Ka El Thorin, I was a elven dream speaker and song weaver. I was known as the speaker of the winds at one point because I sang to the planet and this giant temple of the winds sang with me. And so it became one of my nicknames, you could say, or titles. And in that life, honestly, the way of life for our people and our connection and our communion with the planet was seemingly perfect, like absolutely perfect. Like we just had it dialed. Everything from food to our way of constructing buildings to our way of relating to nature and singing to nature. And we were in this incredibly beautiful state of balance and harmony, which you could say was almost a utopia, right? However, there was a period where there were a lot of very difficult things happening on other worlds. And some of those difficulties were happening here on Earth. And in that life, I saw many people that I loved, beings that I cared about, making major sacrifices to come to help this other world and to help souls transition between worlds that had been influenced by war and ravaged at different points in time. And I felt like we, with all of our gifts and all of our perfection as elves, we should help. We should help them because we've got all these skills, we got all this down, we should help. But the other major leaders that were, keepers of the ways and guides for their people and for the different lands, they resisted this because they're like, well, why should we go down, like drop ourselves down into these mucky places where people have all these issues and there's all these karmas and all these emotional issues and people are still killing each other. Like, why should we drop to that level? We've already got heaven on earth, right? We've already got this beautiful way of life. And in me, I felt like that was blindness. It felt like hubris. It felt like, privilege. And I and many of my soul family and friends were like, no, we are going to go and we're going to help. And we're going to do what we can to help these other souls and other people because that felt like more loving. That was
Mhm.
more loving of an act than staying in our sort of pristine paradise. And nature and the planet we were on, called Shalumea, rose to support us. The energies of the land itself rose to support us in that process because it's true from the universal spiritual law perspective. It was the right choice for us to grow by actually bringing ourselves to those that were in need of our assistance and our help, and to drop our hubris and to drop our privilege to do that. So that was a very different kind of lesson.
It was a different kind of lesson, but that you could equate something like that to happen on the human scale, right?
Sure, sure. Yeah, and from that standpoint, there are universal patterns that
Right.
consciousness goes through. But the way that those patterns look and feel and are experienced are vastly different across worlds.
So that's why we may incarnate on another planetary galactic system. because
It
so
may be that we incarnate because there's a soul resonance with that star system. We may incarnate there because friends of ours have incarnated there. We may incarnate there because there's a mission we've got to go do, and we're an Arcturian, and we're like, oh my God, I feel this mission. I need to do this. This is part of my soul's purpose. But it all does come back to soul purpose at a level. Where you've incarnated and why and how you do so comes back to your own journey.
right. So what do you feel? Well, your purpose is to kind of educate, right? Is or inform or explore. How do people find their soul purpose, though?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I have many layers to my soul purpose. And it is found through memory and through realizing the sacred patterns in what you've chosen. When you realize why you've chosen what you've chosen to get to where you are, your purpose becomes very, very clear. So it's not something that you just, one day you get it and it's just done and that's it. Like, for example, when I was in high school, I had a lot of really profound realizations, and I knew that part of my purpose, or what I thought was my whole purpose at that time, but it's just a part of my purpose, was to build a bridge between science and spirituality. So I did my senior project in high school called the Unification of Science and Spirituality through Unified Field Theoretics. And I thought that was the whole big shebang of what I was supposed to do in this life. But then, after 5 years later, I have a galactic contact experience and I meet an extraterrestrial being from another world. And I remember I'm not from this planet. And then I realize, wow, it's not just science and spirituality. I'm actually bridging our world with galactic civilization. And like, what does that mean to be a bridge between where we are now as a human civilization on our own planet and being part of this greater galactic civilization? And so my own sense of purpose continued to evolve throughout my life as I started to see more and more aspects of myself, patterns, and saw memories from past lives.
So someone looking at their life and trying to find that direction. I mean, I think I know what I'm here for. I'm really enjoying it, like we said. But
Nice.
someone who's listening here or reading
Yeah,
the book,
sure.
um, and they say, well, they know they're here to do something because they're here and but but how do they start to tap into I guess, their own soul? How do we start to know our own soul? If you're new to this field, if you've just woken up yesterday or something, read that book, Lifetimes.
It's a good
Great.
start. And if you're really trying to deep dive and you're getting a lot of galactic memories, you're confused because you're having memories of interstellar war and stuff with dragons and aspects of some kind of galactic conflict, and you're confused about, is this going to happen now? Like, are there beings coming to take us from other worlds and stuff? I recommend my other book if that's what you've got really
Yeah.
coming up alive for you right now, called The Dragon Key. It's a much bigger book, much deeper dive into galactic past lives. But this book is really easy read. You can probably read it in a day or two. It's very accessible. You can share it with your parents, your friends, your family, your relatives, anyone who you want to just be like, hey, I've had some past life memories. Like, you should read this book because there's a lot of things that you start to realize about your life when you start to see that. And frankly, there's not many good books on this topic out there. I mean, Brian Weiss, obviously, Many Lives, Many Masters, is huge, and miracles happen. And then Michael Newton with Journey of Souls, and those two books are two of really the only tomes that are there for guidance for people on this topic. And so I got invited by the Common Sentience group with, other authors like Neil Donald Walsh and Anodea Judith and Freddie Silva and Suzanne Gleesman and all these other amazing people to join them and create this book specifically because of my own experience with this and mastery around this topic, to create a very accessible way that anyone can pick up this book. And by the time you get to the end of the book, you'll understand if you've had past lives, if you've had past life memories, and you'll have the tools and the skills to not only access them, but gain the skills and the memories from them. And I'm opening up a couple courses as well over the holidays. And the big one is the Shift Network course that's launching right at the beginning of the year. And the intro is going to be December 21st, I think, on the solstice. And also doing a common sentience course that's paired with the book directly. So you can work with me through the practices in the book and different skills you can develop.
What's the name of the Shift Network course that you're doing? What's the focus?
You know what? I don't know if they've given it a final title yet, but it will be the release date or the big free intro experience date is on December 20th. So
Yeah,
make a
I
note in your
like them. I
calendar.
just did a course with them. I just had a couple of hundred
Oh,
people
great. Nice.
on
Yeah.
remote. So I think they do a really good job. I recommend it. And
Yeah. That's great.
one more thing about this book is that you have other people, like they do in a lot of the common sentience, write their stories. How did you feel about the other contributions in that book, in this book?
They're really, really amazing. I actually met with the whole group yesterday in a live Zoom session so that we could talk about our experiences and they could share more about, what made them want to write for the book and what brought these memories forward. I think that it's a really beautiful resource because as you're reading the book, you're like, huh, okay, these are some really cool concepts, really interesting. But what about my experience I had? Like, has anybody had an experience like me? And by the time you read through the 20 different stories, you're probably going to find at least one person that had an experience like you. And then you're like, okay, I get it. This is really valid. This is something real. And then the third part of the book, it gives you the tools to actually access those memories and practice the integration.
Great. Well, you've done a great job with this whole thing. It's a part of the Common Sentient series. One last question, and I also want to talk to you about what else you have coming up. It's
Okay.
just explain what microtubules are, because they seem to be the interface between the physical and non-physical realms somehow, right? So
Mm.
tell me.
Well, microtubules are filaments that exist around the neurons in your brain tissue. And these tiny little filaments, we don't they're like partially carbon, they're partially tube, but they're so small that they exhibit quantum behaviors and quantum effects. So these are kind of like tiny little quantum antennas that come off of all of the axons and the dendrites in your neurons inside of your brain. So your brain is building cells and tissues, right, to connect and to map the things that you're experiencing. But it also between in all these gaps between the axons and the dendrites where those connections are being made, you have this quantum accessible structure called a microtubule. And that quantum accessible structure can access information in the quantum field, meaning it can access information inside of protons themselves or entangle with other microtubules in another person's brain. And you have direct brain to brain entanglement, for example, and or can connect to rocks and objects and different things. And a lot of that science is still not very solid yet. They don't understand it fully yet. But what we're seeing in the results of the experiments we've done so far is the surfacing of a lot of information that suggests that a lot of these metaphysical experiences have some validation and grounding, and that we actually have the physiological elements in our bodies that allow for these things to happen.
Right. That's what I saw, kind of suspected that the microtubules are these interdimensional connections that go from the physical to the metaphysical. And of course,
Sure.
we can explain that with mechanistic material science, but
Yeah.
they are the essence of the connections that maybe the soul even uses to connect to these astral other lifetime, past lifetime realms,
Mhm.
because the microtubules are available for higher than physical matter responses. That's what I.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they give the soul the ability. I would say at a soul level, you've got the energy bodies that already can access this information. Like your Akashic body can access the Akashic field. Your
Right.
causal body can access relational information about you and others through all time and history. But as above, so below, right? So you have to, if you're going to have that information stored in your body memory, or work with it through your physical body, you need to bring those higher dimensional information structures down into your physical body and map them with your actual physical brain. And
Right.
so that's what the microtubules help you do, is essentially take this higher dimensional information and build in your neurological map in your brain the interface and the map to be able to sort of have the cartography of these higher dimensional experiences within your body,
Right.
and be able to re-access some of those experiences through reference points.
Mhm.
Because, as you know, Alan, a lot of times you can do a really powerful psychedelic and have a certain kind of experience, but then if you have a really good anchor and reference point to that experience state, afterwards, anytime, you can go in, do that meditation, and get right back to that state again. And that's because your brain is built a map to access that higher state.
Right. So the microtubules, though, are grounding it into a sensorial memory that's embodied from these past lives or these other worlds or these remote views or astral bodies. It
Right.
is what allows us to sort of remember the thing. Anyway, one more thing.
Yeah.
What
To
are you
map
up
it.
to next? Give us your like upcoming schedule and where we can find you, okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so let's see. I just got back from this epic, huge journey through Egypt, and I was invited as a delegate for the King of Bhutan's birthday in Bhutan. And the Prime Minister of India was staying in our hotel. It was absolutely crazy and super high security and pretty wild. So I'm just coming back from that adventure. I think the next conference event that I'm scheduled to be at is Conscious Life Expo, February 20th through 23rd. So I will be there with you, Alan, and many other amazing people at that time. And then I may be at Cannes Film Festival a little bit later into May. And I'm still scheduling out a lot of the things right now for next year and deciding which conferences I want to do and which ones I don't. So you can always go to adamapollo.com, get on my mailing list. I always send out updates for the events that I'm going to be a part of. But yeah, the Shift Network launch on December 20th for that course. That's kind of the next big thing that I'm about to release, and would love to see all of you there. Thank you for joining me.
Great. Well, I definitely recommend any course that Adam gives because he brings the science and spirituality. You've accomplished that mission because you've merged the two into a natural kind of a way of understanding. And also this book, Lifetimes, Common Sentience, just out. Really, I think it's really, you're right. It's really easy to read and integrate the knowledge here. And good job. Always good to see you, my friend. So
Thank you. Such a pleasure, Alan. Always a pleasure hanging out with you. And
we
thanks
will
for your
connect.
amazing questions. You have some of the best questions of anyone. You dig straight to the core, the deepest dive of the matter. So that's
Well,
it's
what else am I
amazing.
going to ask you? Like, how's the weather there in Denver? Why not go deep in there? But okay, we'll be in touch.
Thank
I will
you.
see you in LA at the Conscious
Okay.
Life. And thanks so much, and thanks everyone for watching.
Sounds
And,
great.
to Adam's your website again is adamapollo.com.
AdamApollo.com and also thedragonkey.com if you're interested in that book. And they're both on Amazon. Lifetimes is also in Barnes and Noble and available there. But yeah, please put it in order if you're interested. It helps me, hit the bestseller markers, and then I can get it translated in more languages. So thank you all for your support, and big love and happy holidays to all of you.
Great. Good luck with all that. See you soon. Great job. Go for it, my friend. Go for it. I'll see you
Thank
soon.
you,
Thanks
Alan.
everyone for
Take care.
watching.